Hi everyone, welcome to Scrap Happiness Studio. Today we're going to start exploring a class that I call Fun with 4 and 9 Patches, because although it's a continuation and a variation of free cut piecing, when we're starting out with 4 and 9 patches. And I started teaching this class based on this quilt. People asked me how I had made it, and I had to stop and think about it. And I realized it took me a while to analyze how I did it, but all of the directions for making this quilt are in the handouts that can be found in the description below. And so this started with a 9 patch. And this quilt started with a 9 patch. So you can, and it's, if you look carefully, you can see it in there, but you can see that this technique also works really well with, as a modern quilt or as old-fashioned. So I'm going to stop here and then go over to look at some 9 patches. Hello everyone. So first of all, I want to say that exploring 4 and 9 patches is a good exercise and fun for all experience levels. And in fact, I make 9 patches in particular when I don't know what else to do, but I can make 9 patches easily. They're a design element that's familiar the world over. So they're a good design element both in their virgin state, but also when we start cutting them up, because the really cool thing about 4 and 9 patches is that they maintain their design integrity even when they're chopped up. So, and I can demonstrate that by this. See, even though I chop off all the sides, that 4 patch is still there. And likewise, in a 9 patch, you can chop this up a lot, but that design element still stays there. Even if you chop it over here, you end up with something that's interesting, that's a good design element. And I should explain, if you're really brand new, this is a 4 patch and this is a 9 patch with 9 pieces of fabric in here. I also, they usually start out with a square, but you can also start out with a rectangle, and there's all different ways to sign them up. But the traditional blocks are in squares. And I did take notes to keep myself on track here. There's loads and loads of ways to make 4 and 9 patches. And if you have a quilt book or YouTube videos, or have ever taken a class, you know the means of making them by taking squares or by using strips of fabric to make them. And those are really good ways, but we want to free cut piece them. So, if you already know how to make these, you can you can stop watching here, except that you have homework for the next workshop. Because in order to chop up and play with 4 and 9 patches, you need to have some. So you need to, if you already know how to do this, just go and make a bunch, but make them large. Make them between 9 and 12 inches, because when you chop them up a lot, you lose a lot in the seam allowances. Okay, so those experienced people, we'll see you next time. But if you're a beginner, we're going to show you how to make these by the chain piecing method, Eleanor Burns's method that I love so much. So most of the times you start out with a square, and the traditional block is you want to cut them into equal squares. And you don't have to. If you're making these on your own, you can cut these any which way and you'll get a cool block. But let's start out with the more traditional ones. So we're going to eyeball it and go down the center both ways. And then you're going to mix and match. Actually, you're kind of designing on your cutting mat, which is helpful. Okay, so we have column 1 and column 2. So we're going to sew column 2 onto column 1, right sides together. And I think I have found on my video editor how how to speed this along, which I will try to do. Now you don't cut the thread in between here. You leave, when you chain, one of the virtues of chain piecing is all your pieces stay together in order. Although you can get them mixed up, but with chain piecing, you can always open them up and make sure that you have your design right. And again, because we're free cut piecing, because these are relatively straight lines, you can go to 1/4 of an inch, but in free cut piecing, it's anywhere between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. So here are our blocks. And so now we're going to go and sew these together the other way. And if you're brand new to quilting, usually what you want to do, and I hope I'm showing this right, is to bend these seam allowances like this just to minimize bulk in your seams so that you don't have 6 layers on one side and 2 on the other. This way there's 4 layers on both sides. Helps your piece lie flatter. And because that's sewn together there, that's where you know it needs to meet up to be centered, which is not critical in free cut piecing, but if you can do it, I usually do. And then I don't need to do this, but I would do the same thing with this piece. Okay, so that's how you get your blocks. So there's our completed 4-patch. Okay, now we're going to do a 9-patch. Now, traditional 9-patches are done in just 2 colors, but I like to do it with a 3rd color because I think it adds more interest. So again, here, I can cut these up. I can cut this anyway. And when you're exploring, you might want to do this. You can do real skinny cuts. You can do real fat cuts, which gives you some cool blocks. But for this exercise, let's just do a traditional one. So we're going to cut this basically in 3rds. And in free cut piecing, however many pieces of fabric you stack up, that's how many blocks you're going to get. Now, because in a 4-patch we're using two pieces, I just stacked up 2 pieces of fabric, but you could do a multiple of 6, up to 6 layers if you want to, and that would yield 6 4-patches. But because I've learned through teaching this that it's easy to get mixed up, on this 9-patch, just start out with 3. Less could get mixed up. And I'm just doing it in the kind of traditional method. And again here, so here again, I've got 3 columns, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to ignore, well, I'm going to design first with this. So I'm just going to flip this to the bottom. And you can go ahead and get all your blocks designed like this. Don't worry too much about what looks good together because these are going to get so mixed up as we go. So we can ignore column 3 for right now. And we're going to sew column 2, right sides together, onto column 1. And you can get mixed up doing this, but you can always fix it again, or you can get some very interesting blocks. And I'm hoping, I'm going to sew these together, but I'm hoping I can speed it up. Because if you're a beginner, it's helpful to see the whole process. And I think you can see this when you're under your machine. If you get mixed up where you are, you can always go and open up your blocks and visually check or you can count to see where you should be at. Having said all that, I still sometimes get mixed up, but it's better if you don't. So I'll keep doing this through all the pieces. Also, when you're choosing fabrics for free cut piecing, it's good to choose fabrics. Wait a minute, did I pick up the wrong thing? I did. See, I was going to pick up the wrong thing. It's these that need to get picked up next. It's good to pick fabrics with some contrast, but as I showed in the first examples, if you don't, you can add contrast when we start mixing up these pieces. Okay, leave your pieces strung together, and then start back up at the top here and add on column 3. You can cut these apart. See, that's a little bit easier at this stage because you can actually see the blocks coming. You know that if you have this yellow on this side of the center square, then it definitely needs to be on this side. And again, in free cut piecing, be careful when you have fabric that's the same on the front and the back to not flip your pieces over because they won't fit correctly. Free cut piecing is all based on edges that match each other. Okay, so just to save your time and patience, I'm going to stop this before I sew the rest of these pieces on. I'll do that in a little bit. But you would continue sewing all those down until you have this. And then just like with the 4 patch, we're going to take that, and usually you want to fold toward dark if you can, away from light things. So I'm going to do that here, but because of the way you cut it up, these seams may not match up nicely, and it doesn't matter. This still reads as a 9 patch, even if things don't match up. And when you bend your seams up, you want to bend them up. Either they're all up or all down. If you're new to this, let me show you that. See, if this one's bent up, then this one needs to be bent up for that flatness. And then I'm going to go and sew. So I sew with this side up, so that way I can see that, okay, this one is down. So that means that one on the bottom needs to be up. That helps your blocks lie really flat. Oh, I'm bending that one the wrong way. If your seam does get flipped the wrong way, it's not the end of the world. But if you can do it nicely, it's important. And then run to the ironing board and press. So your homework for the next lesson is to make some 4 patches to get the hang of this whole technique. Then make 9 patches. And like I instructed the experienced sewers, make them starting out like 9 inches, because we're going to chop them up a bunch. And so we need to have enough fabric there so that your black doesn't get lost in the seam allowances. Okay, good. I hope, be sure to go and download the handout for a written reference, and I will see you next time. So thanks for joining me, and hit like and subscribe if you're enjoying the videos. Bye.